And we're back. So, what was I saying? Bacteria, pasteurization. Pasteur also had a bunch of different vaccinations. Cholera, tuberculosis, rabies. He's the reason if your puppy gets in a fight with a raccoon, the puppy doesn't die anymore. Pasteur came up with the rabies vaccination. French did. This one's super easy. James Watt steam engine. If you see Watt, find the steam engine. Easy enough. Henry Bessemer had developed the process for making steel. This is called the Bessemer process. The guy's name's in it, don't get it wrong. Good? Eli Whitney developed the cotton gin. He also developed replaceable parts. Mainly when he did it, it was for guns, for rifles. Okay? Any of y'all got a Samsung phone? Everybody in here Apple? You're sheep. You're all of you are sheep. Apple sheep, myself included. Okay? Samsung phones, you can use that cord for anything. You can use it for your cell phone, a portable charger, your PlayStation controller, your Xbox controller, headphones, whatever. Okay? Whitney and the replaceable parts can be pushed into something even like that. Make sense? The cotton gin increased the demand for slave labor. Slavery ended in the United States in 1865 with the Civil War and the 13th Amendment. Britain also outlawed the slave trade and then slavery. James Hargreaves developed the spinning jenny. This one's super easy. The spinning jenny weaves thread together. James Hargreaves invented something that weaves. Make sense? Good? All right, let's talk about capitalism and communism and socialism. Capitalism is largely described in Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. Okay? Here you have market competition, entrepreneurial abilities play a major role. You have an impact on standard of living and growth of the middle class. This does cause a dissatisfaction with the poor working conditions and unequal distribution of wealth in society, but we'll get to that in a minute. The key thing here is capitalism is an economic system in which individuals control the factors of production rather than the government. Now, there is no pure capitalist economy. Even in the United States, it's not purely capitalist. The economy is not free of the government. Okay? However, we are a largely capitalist nation. So when you think capitalism, think the United States. Okay? Basically, capitalism boils down to this. And there are exceptions to this rule. There are some people who this does not work for. But capitalism boils down to you work for what you get. Okay? That's how we do grades. Grades are a capitalist. You get the grade you earn, the grade you work for. Does that make sense? Now, socialism and communism are excellent on paper. Reality, not so much. So let's talk about it. This is Karl Marx. Okay, the guy looks like an angry Santa Claus. Karl Marx. He wrote the Communist Manifesto with Friedrich Engels, who was a German philosopher. And he also wrote Das Kapital. They were influential in the growth of communism. Engels wrote The Condition of the Working Class in 1845, then the Communist Manifesto. Socialism and communism were a response to the injustices of capitalism. You had the redistribution of wealth, which was important to communists. Socialism is an economic and political system in which the government owns the means of production and operates all businesses. Okay? The government owns the means of production. Communism is socialism on steroids. Okay? In communism, you had a class struggle. Okay? The proletariat, the poor workers, will rise up and overthrow the bourgeoisie, overthrow the owners, kill them all. And then we live in a nice, peaceful utopia. That don't work. That ain't true. And then the whole redistribution of wealth thing. That would be like, let's say, who was this last week? Billy? Is that who I named him? Billy? I don't remember. Okay, this is Billy. All right? Billy gets 100 on his test. Tiffany gets a 50. Billy worked his tail off to study. Tiffany didn't do anything. Capitalism, Billy gets 100, Tiffany gets a 50, everybody's happy. Moves on. They get what they earn. Communism, they both get 75s. Because it's not fair that Billy worked harder than Tiffany. That's not fair. It's not Tiffany's fault she didn't work hard. So let's take some of Billy's points and give them to Tiffany. That's fair, right? Who likes that system, Billy or Tiffany? Tiffany. She gets the good grade but doesn't have to do the work. Billy doesn't like it because he does the work and doesn't get the good grade. So the next test rolls around, is Billy going to work as hard? No. Is Tiffany going to work harder? No. She knows she's going to get some of Billy's points. So this next test, Billy gets an 80, Tiffany gets a 40. They both end up with 60s. Next test, 60, 20. They both end up with 40s. Y'all see how this goes? Do not listen. This is as close to talking about politics as I'll ever get in this class, as far as American politics. If someone stands up here and says, the government's going to take care of you, okay? The government's got you, then, hang on a second. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Student walking through, figured rather than putting 3 parts of a video, I just cover the camera for a second. Okay. This is close to talking about American politics as I'll get to in class, okay? If someone stands up here and says, the government's going to take care of you, okay? We're going to make it better. Don't listen to them. I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. Don't listen to them. Because they've had multiple bills in Congress for the last 4.5, 5 months to help people. With all this coronavirus stuff, businesses failing, people out of work, people losing their homes. There have been bills in Congress, and both parties are stalling because they don't want to be seen as taking a loss. They don't want to be seen as giving up to the other party. Republicans and Democrats. If they say the government's going to take care of you, if they promise you free college, or free health care, or free this, free that, don't listen to them. Nothing is free. Except for this advice. This advice is free. Because you don't have to pay for public school, and I don't have an offering plate up here. They're telling you it's free. Don't listen. It's not true. Okay? We good? There's my 2 soapboxes. Y'all got 2 soapboxes in one class. Look at that. All right. Nature of work in the factory system. We talked about cottage industries fell, factory systems increase. You had harsh working conditions. Harsh working conditions with men competing with women for children and wages. So, if I have to pay a man $2, a woman $1, or a child 50 cents, who am I going to hire? I'm going to hire the kid because it makes me more money. Does that make sense? Yeah, I got to hire a couple men, to move machines around, whatever. I'll hire a couple women to do something that I don't need men for, but a child can't do. But for the most part, I'm going to hire children. It makes me more money. Y'all see the thought process here, why they did the way they did? Because child labor kept costs of production low, profits high. The owners of the mines and factories exercised considerable control over the lives of their workers. There are mining towns in West Virginia. I mean, all over the country, but mainly West Virginia. Where the owner of the mine owned the mine, the school, the bank, the grocery store, the church. Everything in that town belonged to the factory owner, the mine owner. So if little Timmy says, I don't like these working conditions. Mr. Owner, we need to talk. The owner says, well, you're fired, but now you can't live here. You can't shop here. You can't go to church here. Kids can't go to school here. You have to leave town. See the issue here?
Yeah, who's working? Did you ask to work with someone else?
No.
Oh.
You move to another mining town or another factory town where the same thing happens. Over and over and over. It's just a cycle. Let's go ahead and talk about Little Becky, Little Timmy here for a second. All right. Little Becky and Little Timmy are brother and sister. Okay? They have two parents, mom, dad, whatever. Little Timmy goes and works in the mines with his dad. Little Becky goes and works in a sewing factory, and then mom works in a shirtwaist factory, which is, they make like clothing. Okay? One day, in the mine, little Timmy and his dad were just working. Little Timmy loves going to work with his dad. Just happy as can be, just chipping away at the wall with his little tiny pickaxe. And a huge chunk of the ceiling falls. Crushes little Timmy's leg. So his dad picks him up, rushes him out of the mine. Little Timmy gets his leg fixed up. And then a couple days later, they go back to work. Okay, his dad's just chipping away. Little Timmy, he can't chip at the wall because his leg, he can't balance. So instead, they have little Timmy running messages. Pun. Running messages back and forth between the different groups of miners. So he's just crutching along with his little message. Still loving life, still at work, still with his dad. He likes it. Well, all of a sudden, he hears a bunch of shouting down in the mine and a rumble. Someone had struck a gas pocket down deep in the mine and exploded. And the mine was collapsing. So they're all rushing out of the mine. Little Timmy, he's just crutching as fast as he can, trying to get out of there. And then there's a cloud of dust. When the dust clears, you just see one of little Timmy's hands and a crutch laying there. Little Timmy's a pancake. Happened all the time. Little Becky is heartbroken over the loss of her brother. Little Becky's dad, he's heartbroken over the loss of his son. So he turns to the bottle, leaves the family, disappears off into the night. Never to be heard from again. Now, this story goes, we'll say the dad got attacked by a buffalo on the plains and he gets his justice. Fair enough? Okay. I don't know. I've never actually fleshed out the dad side of this story before. So little Becky is working in the clothing factory. Just trying to work through the loss of her brother. Little Becky's tiny. Okay, you saw her. She was up on the machine, no shoes. She's tiny. And her job is to, if the machine gets stuck, she reaches down to the machine and fixes whatever it is. It had something called a shuttle, about this long, probably about that wide, solid piece of metal. And it just goes really fast, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it clips the threads as it goes. So little Becky's watching the shuttle because she sees a screw that's come loose down there. She's watching the shuttle, watching it, and it stops. She's like, okay. So she reaches down to get the screw and her finger gets caught. Here comes the shuttle. Lops off her arm. She pulls it up. She's bleeding out. She's screaming. Blood everywhere. There's a nice new red color to this thread. The factory owner walks over. He's like, Becky, what happened? She's screaming, her arm got cut off. Picks her up, takes her to the infirmary. They take up a piece of, like a clothing iron, old school clothing iron, heat it up, and just press it up against the arm to cauterize the wound, stop the bleeding. Bandage her up, send her home. couple days later, little Becky comes back to work. Now, she can't reach down because she can't hold on to the machine because, she's missing an arm. So instead they get her like one of the little mechanic carts. You know what I'm talking about? They lay back on and they slide under the cars. Same thing, she just slides under the machines, gets whatever it is, no problem. So they push little Becky under there, and she's picking up the little scraps, and there's a rumble. One of the legs gives out on the machine. Machine falls down, cut off this arm earlier, cuts off this leg. Okay? She's screaming, blood everywhere. Factory owner comes out. Little Becky again? He already has the iron. He knows what's going on. Just cauterizes her leg, sends her home. A couple days later, little Becky comes back to work. Because Dad ran off, Timmy's dead, Becky has to work to bring money home for the family. So same thing, she's still got a leg and an arm, so they still give her her little mechanic cart. Under the machine, there's a rumble. Little Becky tucks up. Machine falls. They lift the machine up. Little Becky's fine. So she stretches out because she's been stuck like this for a couple hours while they try to move the machine. As she stretches, the machine falls again. Cuts off her other leg, other arm. Here comes the factory owner with the iron, cauterizes the wounds, sends little Becky home. Tells her not to come back because she can't work now. So little Becky's mom still works at the other factory, and she has to keep going to work because now she's the only income. So every morning when she goes to work, she pushes little Becky out. Now little Becky's in a wheelchair. Pushes her out on the balcony so she can see outside and everything while she's at work. Little Becky's bitter and very mad at the world, understandably so. So every day little Becky spits at the people on the street and yells cussing at them. All day, every day. Just spitting on them and cussing at them. This goes on for about 2 weeks. And finally the apartment owner comes in and says, little Becky's mom, you got to do something about your daughter. Okay? If you don't, I'm going to have to kick you out of the apartment building. We can't keep getting these complaints every day that your kid is spitting on people. She says, okay, sir, I'm sorry. Next day she takes little Becky to work with her. Little Becky's mom works at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City. So she pushes little Becky up near the window so she can see outside, look at the city. All day they're working, you just hear little Becky in the corner cussing and spitting at the window. Okay, there's just a glaze of spit on the window. That's the only thing that gives her joy in life anymore, is cussing at people and spitting on them on the street. Luckily the window was closed. The problem is, they hear shouting. There's something that's caught fire in this factory. Now with a shirtwaist factory, there's linen everywhere, oil everywhere from the machines. It goes up. So people rush to the elevator. Way overfill the elevator. As it's going down, cable snaps. You just hear this horrible screech and the crunch of metal and bone. So then people try to flee down the fire escape. Little Becky's mom was one of the first to get to the bottom. She lives. Now, as all these people are pouring out on the fire escape, you hear what sounds like gunshots. Okay? The fire is now shooting at the people. I'm totally kidding. It's the bolts coming out of the side of the building because the fire escape's too overloaded. And there's just this horrible screech, fire escape falls. People are now jumping out of the windows because they'd rather die by hitting the pavement than burning to death. Little Becky's mom's looking around. Where's little Becky? Where's little Becky? She looks up, and behind the fire, in front of the fire, you just see a shadow of little Becky spitting at the window and cussing as the flames take over the factory. Little Becky's mom's the only one that survives here. Depending on which story I decide to tell. Sometimes someone jumping out the window hits little Becky's mom. Just depends. Now, part of that story is true. The shirtwaist factory, that did burn down. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The rest of it I made. Okay, sometimes people are like, oh my God, is that true? No. It's horribly exaggerated. But I'm trying to give you a look into how bad the working conditions were. Does it make sense? Everybody with me? So, there's that. Ta-da! Little Becky, little Timmy. Y'all didn't enjoy that story as much as my kids usually do. Hurts my heart. You had the introduction of reforms to end child labor. You had the expansion of education. We already talked about that. You had the increased demands for suffrage. During this time period, women get the right to vote. Congratulations. When you turn 18, vote. Or these women died for nothing. Some of these women were arrested and died in prison, and all they were doing was trying to get the right to vote. I'm not going to go into it right now. There's a movie called Iron Jawed Angels, I believe, that's about the women's suffrage movement. Really good if y'all want to watch it. Maybe at the end of the semester, if we have time, we might watch it. It's a really good movie. Then the rise of labor unions. Okay, they organized. Okay, how about this? They did strikes, lobbying, and collective bargaining. Let's talk about what those are. A strike is to stop working until demands are met. Lobbying is the influence in the voting of legislatures or public officials. Collective bargaining is negotiating between a union and an employer to come up with like rules, wages, working conditions, things like that. Make sense? Triangle shirtwaist. 20 minutes. Less than 20 minutes, 146 people died. Okay? Burning to death, jumping to their deaths. They had to bring in families to identify people by their teeth or their jewelry on their hands because the rest of the body they couldn't identify. Heartbreaking. Mr. Harmon likes to show a video about Triangle Shirtwaist that shows like them talking about having to identify bodies and things like that. I don't like to show it, it's too sad. And that's just whatever. This is imperialism once again. They hit Africa and Asia very heavily. Different forms of imperialism. You had colonies, which is a territory under the immediate political control. Protectorates are a weak nation under the protection and partial control. Sphere of influence is an area of one country under the control of another. Spheres of influence you mainly only see in China. But I like to explain it like this. If I tell my child to do something, do I have complete control over my child?
Until you
Yeah, he's 2. I got control over him. Okay? He relies on me to keep him alive. So, I can control over this kid. Protectorate. My partner. Okay, my wife. Do I have control over my wife?
No.
No. And any guy that tells you he has control over his wife is lying. Okay? Now, if I ask her to do something, could she do it? Yeah, we're partners. Okay? Now, a stranger, if I ask a stranger to do something, are they going to listen? Probably not, unless they ask for advice, whatever. And that's how it goes. Colonies, you have the most control. Protectorates is like 50-50. Sphere of influence, little to no control. Does that make sense? In Africa and Asia, you have European domination, Christian missionary efforts. Spheres of influence in China, the Suez Canal, which linked the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, the East India Company in India, and the American opening of Japan to trade. I'm going to hit this stuff quick because this is very quickly becoming almost an hour-long lesson. And I don't want to wait to upload that to YouTube. Berlin Conference of 1885, this split Africa up between European countries. Okay? Split Africa up between these European countries. By 1914, there were only 2 independent nations left in Africa. That was Liberia and Ethiopia. This is the Suez Canal right here. It connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. And Britain considered this a lifeline to India. The U.S. sent Matthew Perry and a fleet of 4 American warships to Japan in 1853 and forced Japan to agree to the Treaty of Kanagawa, which opened up trade with the United States. The Boer War was fought in South Africa between the British and these Dutch descendants of Dutch-speaking settlers known as Boers. It was fought over gold mines. Okay. In China, you had armed conflicts leading up to the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxer Rebellion Boxers were a group of people in China who were upset with foreigner influence and went through the countryside killing any foreigners or Christians they found. This led to an allied army of French, German, Russian, American, and Japanese troops attacking, taking over Beijing, and forcing the Chinese to surrender. In India, you had the rise of nationalism with the first Indian Nationalist Party, which was the Indian National Congress. At first, they just wanted to govern with the British. Then it led to independence a little later on. Ta-da. Any questions? Okay, if you guys have any questions, leave a comment under the video, shoot me an email, something like that, and I will answer it to the best of my ability.